All right, so now when it comes to meshing, it's important to choose your meshing strategy. You're looking for three important components. Number one, you need a mesh that's accurate, so with adequate quality in order to actually achieve convergence and a viable result. You're also looking for something that's efficient. So when it comes to cell count and element type, it's not high enough that it's going to take too long to actually solve, or it's big enough that it's going to outgrow your actual RAM and you can't actually set the simulation up. And then the other thing you want to do is make sure that it's easy to generate. So you want to make sure if you're going to take a couple hours to actually solve it, you're not going to take a couple days to set it up. Right, and the goal is to find the best compromise between accuracy, efficiency, and ease of generation. For our particular use, we're going to be using Fluent meshing. So Fluent meshing is similar to ANSYS meshing. It's more powerful though. It has more element types and you can do a lot more with it, and you can also be fully automated as well. So when it comes to mesh generation, I'd normally start off with some sort of coarse mesh and then refine around areas of interest like the wake region and important pressure gradients like underneath the wing. Using Fluent meshing, there are different element types that can be created, each for their own benefit. So prisms are used to capture the boundary layer. The quality can be reduced around complex surfaces, so it's important to make sure that you repair the geometry. Normally, I'm sure everyone's exposed to a TET grid, which can be used to resolve areas of high complexity with high resolution. However, it can take quite a bit of time to solve. The next best thing from that is called the polyhedral grid. So what it does, it takes a couple of TET elements and combines a couple of TET elements to make a polyhedral element. So the benefit of that is that it can actually reduce time reduce cell count, by 3 to 5 times, therefore reducing CPU time. It does come though at the expense of requiring extra RAM. Then afterwards we've got hex core. So what this does is that you can apply inflation, so prism layers and TETs on the surface. And then what you can do afterwards is that it'll fill it then with a hexahedral element, which is computationally more efficient, and you'll take less time overall. And what I would recommend, so this is new to ANSYS 19, which is why I recommended people installing it. But the next thing would be polyhex core. So polyhex core, again, you can have prism layers on the surface, you've got polyhedral elements, and then you transition out to hexahedral elements, hex elements. And the benefit of that, again, it'll be due to the poly elements, it's got a smaller grid, so it should take quicker to actually run. Cool. So when it comes to the mesh, it's very, very important to ensure that you've got a good quality mesh. If the quality is low, it can encounter issues when it comes to convergence and inaccurate results. Within Fluent meshing, there are tools that can be used in order to improve the surface mesh and volume mesh by improving the poor quality cells and even getting to the point where you can move individual nodes. All right. So the next thing I also want to talk about is about the prism layer and about inflation. But before we talk about that, let's just touch a little bit on the turbulent boundary layer. So the boundary layer, number one, is important to capture in order to understand when things will separate and also to understand things like lift and drag. Okay, so there are two layers within the boundary layer. Well, there are 3 layers in the boundary layer. There are 2 that we're interested in. One's called the laminar layer. It's a viscous sublayer. It's right next to the wall surface, and it then transitions into a fully turbulent log layer, which is the outer layer, and then the free stream velocity. Now, resolving closer to the wall accurately predicts skin friction drag and the pressure gradients, and the adverse pressure gradient, which can induce separation. So that's going to be very important for things like wings, diffusers, anything that has a lifting surface. And then the adverse pressure gradients, again, are really important to characterize flow around the car. Right. So if we were to resolve the laminar layer, which is very close to the wall, we would need to ensure our first cell height is very small, with enough prism layers to also capture the rest of the boundary layer, as is the example on the left-hand side. Whereas we have the example on the right-hand side, which has a very large first cell height. So as you can see, we need more elements in the first case. However, it would, more elements than the right-hand side. However, it would increase computational resources. But what it would do is it would accurately resolve the boundary layer, leading to accurate lift and drag predictions. Now, in order to estimate the first cell height, we'll use a dimensionless value called the Y plus number. It's an equation that's proportional to the flow, velocity, density, and shear stress at the wall. We've got a calculator for it on the LEAP academic portal and the LEAP CFD blog, which we'll link you to. And so what we're also looking at the moment is just a graph of Y plus on the x-axis and U plus on the y-axis, U plus being a normalized velocity in the boundary layer. So as you can see here, we've got two lines that use two different equations in order to capture the boundary layer. We've got the blue line, which captures the profile of the laminar sublayer, and the red line of the turbulent log layer. So it's advised to ensure that your Y plus ranges from either below 30 or below 5 or above 30, as resolving the boundary layer, the buffer layer, results in numerical errors due to the intersection of the actual equations. So it's again, there's a Y plus calculator which we'll link you towards, and it'll help you understand exactly what first cell height you should be looking for. And then afterwards, you can use the eddy viscosity ratio in order to understand if you've captured the correct amount of layers. It's again, I'll link you to that later on. So the other thing that's really important is to ensure that you do a mesh study. So when meshing, like a coarse mesh can be very quick, but it may be unable to capture the flow features. A fine mesh might be very accurate, but it will take a lot of time to actually to solve. So what a mesh study does is that by changing the volume and the inflation mesh, we can refine the mesh and monitor some sort of point that's valuable to us. For instance, it might be lift or drag, and just understand that roughly where at what point does your monitors for lift and drag stabilize compared to how many elements that you've got in your grid. Right, so we'll go into the actual meshing example as well using Fluent meshing. So just for reference, I used a body of influence around the near region of around 10 mil, in the far region of around 50. We've got curvature controls. So these curvature controls just ensures that you pick up the curvature around the front wing. So we've got sizings from 1 to 10 mil. Proximity sizing, so this is just to ensure that we've got around 3 cells across the gap. And what that does is it ensures we've got a nice inflation region around the wing. We've also scoped prisms to that as well. So I think I was aiming for like a Y plus of 5. So the first cell height is 0.02. We've got 18 layers and the last percent ratio is 20%. So that's just an inflation term I'll talk about later on. I've also realized just by doing this run a couple of times that I need to have some sort of sizing around the rods, the wheels, and just the chassis as well. So this is just an example of the mesh that we'll be creating. We can see that we've got a polyhedral element being created for us. It's finer around the chassis. We've got our two bodies of influence as well, closer to the wheel and the front wing as well. So again, just closer up, we can see we've got a finer mesh around the front wing and less around the actual chassis. So this is just a close-up of the actual end plate as well and the rear wing. We can see we've got multiple elements across the thickness. Again, this ensures a good mesh around the actual plate. And just taking a section, we can see that we've got polyhedrals around the outside, and we've also got hex elements around the inside. Cool. And this is just a close-up of what you'd create. I only added inflation around the front wing. It was just to show that it can be done. So we'll show this is roughly what it looks like. It's again, so we can see the transition from the prism layers off the surface. It then transitions to a polyhedral element, which then transitions out to the hex elements. And this is again just on the front wing, just to show off the curvature sizings. And just a couple of key points when it comes to meshing. So it's important to identify the correct mesh type. So I'd recommend either using a hex core or a poly core if you've got access to it. What you can always do is just do a mesh study. So compare different types of meshes just by creating a certain sizing type and having them next to each other. Have a look at the solve times, have a look at how much memory it creates as well. It'll help you understand what mesh is appropriate for what type of situation. Um, Identify your boundary layer resolutions for the simulation goal. So if you're very interested in lift and drag, you want to have, a very fine Y plus around the wings. However, if you're not too interested about what's happening around the chassis, because the chassis is separating due to geometry, you can always have a coarse Y plus around there. Again, very important to do a mesh study. I get a lot of support calls about this, and a lot of the times people just don't understand what a good mesh looks like. So always just, make sure you start off with something relatively coarse and maybe, make the mesh finer by 20%, rerun the simulation, ensure that it converges, and then have a look at the monitor points and then do it again multiple times, and you'll be able to create your own graph to understand how fine your mesh needs to be in order to capture the fluid flow. So again, just keep in mind, if you've got a clean mesh, you'll have easier convergence as well.